What is life? If we see a dog running or a cow chewing cud or a man shouting loudly on the street, we know that these are living beings. We see them breathing and know that they are alive. Similarly, plants are green and grow over time. So, we know that they are also alive. Living organisms are well-organized structures. They have tissues, tissues have cells, cells have smaller components in them, and so on. What are life processes? The food need to be broken down or built up in the body and finally converted to source of energy and maintaining living structures and molecules that body needs to grow. A series of chemical reactions, that is oxidation reduction, are some common chemical reactions to break down molecules. Many organisms use oxygen sourced from outside the body and to use it or other similar agents needed for breakdown of food, commonly called as respiration. Multicellular organisms have specific organs for particular functions, but microorganisms don't. Nutrition. So, there must be a process to transfer a source of energy from outside the body of the organism, which we commonly call food, to the inside, a process we commonly call nutrition. According to nature, nutrition can be of two types: autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition. Autotrophs take carbon dioxide and water from outside, which is converted into carbohydrates in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. The process is called photosynthesis. Carbohydrates are stored in the form of starch, which is reserved energy and used when required by the plant. Similarly, glycogen is also another source of energy. Stomata are tiny pores present on the lower surface of the leaves. Massive amount of gaseous exchange takes place through stomata for photosynthesis. Also, exchange of gases occurs across the surface of stems, roots, and leaves. Stomata are closest when plant does not need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. The opening and closing of the pore is a function of the guard cells. So, water flow takes place in plants. Water used in photosynthesis is taken up from the soil by the roots in terrestrial plants. Other materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and magnesium are taken up from the soil. Nitrogen is an essential element used in the synthesis of proteins and other compounds. This is taken up in the form of inorganic nitrates or nitrites, or it is taken up as organic compounds which have been prepared by bacteria from atmospheric nitrogen. Heterotrophic nutrition. The food source is stationary, such as grass, or mobile, such as a deer, are the nutritive apparatus used by a cow and a lion. There is a range of strategies by which the food is taken in and used by the organism. Some organisms break down the food material outside the body and then absorb it. For example, fungus, such as bread molds, yeast, and mushrooms. Others take in whole material and break it down inside their bodies, for example, carnivores. What can be taken in and broken down depends on the body design and functioning. Some other organisms derive nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. They are parasites. This nutritive strategy is used by a wide variety of organisms like cuscuta, that is amarbale, orchids, ticks, lice, leeches, and tapeworms. How do organisms obtain their nutrition? In single-celled organisms, the food may be taken in by the entire surface. For example, amoeba takes in food using temporary finger-like extensions, pseudopodia of the cell surface which fuse over the food particle, forming a food vacuole. Nutrition in human beings. The alimentary canal is basically a long tube extending from the mouth to the anus. Various regions are specialized to perform different functions. From the mouth, the food is taken to the stomach through the food pipe or esophagus. The stomach is a large organ which expands when food enters it. The muscular walls of the stomach help in mixing the food thoroughly with more digestive juices. The exit of food from the stomach is regulated by a sphincter muscle which releases it in small amounts into the small intestine. The length of the small intestine differs in various animals depending upon the food they eat. Herbivores eating grass need a longer small intestine to allow the cellulose to be digested. Meat is easier to digest, hence carnivores like tigers have a shorter small intestine. Dental caries. Dental caries or tooth decay causes gradual softening of enamel and dentine. It begins when bacteria acting on sugars produce acids that softens or dematerializes the enamel. Masses of bacteria cells together with food particles stick to the teeth to form dental plaque. Saliva cannot reach the tooth surface to neutralize the acid as plaque covers the teeth. Brushing the teeth after eating removes the plaque before the bacteria produce acids. If it untreated, microorganisms may attack the pulp, causing inflammation and infection. Respiration. Some organisms use oxygen to break down glucose completely into carbon dioxide and water. Some use other pathways that do not involve oxygen. In all cases, the first step is the breakdown of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, into a 3-carbon molecule called pyruvate. Pyruvate may be converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process takes place in yeast during fermentation. Since this process takes place in the absence of air, that is oxygen, it is called anaerobic respiration. It takes place in the mitochondria. The process takes place in the presence of air, that is oxygen. It is called aerobic respiration. The release of energy in this aerobic process is a lot greater than in the anaerobic process. The energy released during cellular respiration is immediately used to synthesize a molecule called ATP, which is used to fuel all other activities in the cell. In these processes, ATP is broken down, giving rise to a fixed amount of energy which can drive the endothermic reactions taking place in the cell. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, an adenosine-derived nucleotide that supplies large amounts of energy to cells for various biochemical processes including muscle contraction and sugar metabolism through its hydrolysis to ADP. It is organic compound substrate in many enzyme catalyzed reactions in the cells of animals, plants, and microorganisms. ATP's chemical bonds store a large amount of chemical energy. ATP therefore functions as the carrier of chemical energy from energy-yielding oxidation of food to energy-demanding cellular processes. Such processes of metabolism are sources of ATP and stored energy. Fermentation, the tricarboxylic acid cycle, and cellular respiration or oxidative phosphorylation all form ATP from adenosine monophosphate, that is AMP, or adenosine diphosphate, that is ADP, and inorganic phosphate. When the reaction goes in the other direction, ATP is broken down to ADP or AMP and phosphate, and the released energy is used to perform chemical, electrical, or osmotic work for the cell. Transportation in human beings. Blood transports food, oxygen, and waste materials in our bodies. Blood consists of a fluid medium called plasma, in which the cells are suspended. Plasma transports food, carbon dioxide, and nitrogenous wastes in dissolved forms. Oxygen is carried by the red blood cells. Many other substances like salts are also transported by the blood. This will be done by heart. It is made up of 2 atriums and 2 ventricles. Because of both oxygen and carbon dioxide have to be transported by the blood, the heart has different chambers to prevent the oxygen-rich blood from mixing with the blood containing carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide-rich blood has to reach the lungs for the carbon dioxide to be removed, and the oxygenated blood from the lungs has to be brought back to the heart. This oxygen-rich blood is then pumped to the rest of the body. Blood pressure. The force that blood exerts against the wall of a vessel is called blood pressure. This pressure is much greater in arteries than in veins. The pressure of blood inside the artery during ventricular systole, that is contraction, is called systolic pressure, and pressure in artery during ventricular diastole, that is relaxation, is called diastolic pressure. The normal systolic pressure is about 120 mm of Hg and diastolic pressure of 80 mm of Hg. Blood pressure is measured with an instrument called sphygmomanometer. High blood pressure is also called hypertension and is caused by the constriction of arterioles, which results in increased resistance to blood flow. It can lead to the rupture of an artery and can lead to internal bleeding. The tubes. Blood vessels. Arteries are the vessels which carry blood away from the heart to various organs of the body. Since the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure, the arteries have thick, elastic walls. Veins collect the blood from different organs and bring it back to the heart. They do not need thick walls because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they have valves that ensure that the blood flows only in one direction. Maintenance by platelets. Naturally, the loss of blood from the system has to be minimized. Leakage would lead to a loss of pressure which would reduce the efficiency of the pumping system. To avoid this, the blood has platelet cells which circulate around the body and plug these leaks by helping to clot the blood at these points of injury. Lymph. There is another type of fluid which also helps in transportation. This is called lymph or tissue fluid. Through the pores present in the walls of capillaries, some amount of plasma, proteins, and blood cells escape into intercellular spaces in the tissues to form the tissue fluid or lymph. Lymph drains into lymphatic capillaries from the intercellular spaces which join to form large lymph vessels that finally open into larger veins. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fat from intestine and drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Capillaries. The smallest vessels have walls which are 1 cell thick and are called capillaries. Exchange of material between the blood and surrounding cells takes place across this thin wall. The capillaries then join together to form veins that convey the blood away from the organ or tissue. Transportation in plants. For plants, the soil is the nearest and richest source of raw materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals. The absorption of these substances occurs through roots. Plant transport systems will move energy stores from leaves and raw materials from roots. These two pathways are constructed as independently organized conducting tubes. One, the xylem, moves water and minerals obtained from the soil. The other is phloem, transports products of photosynthesis from the leaves where they are synthesized to other parts of the plant. Transport of water. In xylem tissue, vessels and tracheids of the roots, stems, and leaves are interconnected to form a continuous system of water conducting channels reaching all parts of the plant. At the roots, cells in contact with the soil actively take up ions. This creates a difference in the concentration of these ions between the root and the soil. Water therefore moves into the root from the soil to eliminate this difference. This means that there is steady movement of water into root xylem, creating a column of water that is steadily pushed upwards. Transport of food and other substances. This transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called translocation, and it occurs in the part of the vascular tissue known as phloem. The phloem transports amino acids and other substances. These substances are especially delivered to the storage organs of roots, fruits, and seeds, and to growing organs. The translocation of food and other substances takes place in the sieve tubes with the help of adjacent companion cells both in upward and downward directions. Material like sucrose is transferred into phloem tissue using energy from ATP. This increases the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing water to move into it. Thus, moves the material in the phloem to tissues which have less pressure. This allows the phloem to move material according to the plant's needs. For example, in the spring, sugar stored in root or stem tissue would be transported to the buds which need energy to grow. Excretion. Other metabolic activities generate nitrogenous materials which need to be removed. The biological process involved in the removal of these harmful metabolic wastes from the body is called excretion. Excretion in human beings. The excretory system of human beings includes a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. Kidneys are located in the abdomen, one on either side of the backbone. Urine produced in the kidneys passes through the ureters into the urinary bladder, where it is stored until it is released through the urethra. Artificial kidneys, that is hemodialysis. Kidneys are vital organs for survival. Several factors like infections, injury, or restricted blood flow to kidneys reduce the activity of kidneys. This leads to accumulation of poisonous wastes in the body, which can even lead to death. In case of kidney failure, an artificial kidney can be used. An artificial kidney is a device to remove nitrogenous waste products from the blood through dialysis. Excretion in plants. Plants use completely different strategies for excretion from animals. Oxygen itself can be thought of as a waste product generated during photosynthesis. They can get rid of excess water by transpiration. For other wastes, plants use the fact that many of their tissues consist of dead cells and that they can even lose some parts such as leaves. Many plant waste products are stored in cellular vacuoles. Waste products may be stored in leaves that fall off. Other waste products are stored as resins and gums, especially in old xylem. Plants also excrete some waste substances into the soil around them.